right, my friends, it's now time for the Soulful Psalm segment of Beacon of Truth. The Soulful Psalms, we take one of the Psalms from the book of sung praises that we hear in every holy sacrifice of the Mass, and we put that Psalm within the context of the daily Mass readings. And today is the memorial of Saint Scholastica. Saint Scholastica is the twin sister of Saint Benedict, the founder of the Benedictines, and considered, both in the East and the West as the father of Western monasticism. So Saint Benedict was a towering figure in the life of the church at the end of the fourth, beginning of the fifth century. And he had a twin sister. In fact, they are buried together in the monastery of Monte Cassino in Italy. They're buried side by side as twins. And Saint Scholastica actually died first. In fact, Saint Benedict had a vision of her soul going to heaven. That's how he knew that his twin sister died. And I think twins have a connection, a special connection anyway. Having seen my twins grow up and how they communicate with each other, I think there's a special bond there when you grew up in the womb together like that. And so both amazing saints in the church. Of course, Saint Scholastica founded the women's order of Benedictines following her brother's rule. So they were very, very close. So the first reading is from First Kings. And now we see now that Solomon is the king following the reign of his father David. And Solomon is stood at the altar of the Lord in the presence of the whole community, and he's interceding for the people, stretching out his hands to heaven in prayer. Lord God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven above or on earth below. You keep your covenant of mercy with your servants who are faithful to you with their whole heart. Right? We were just talking about this. We are talking about, singing and praising the Lord in church. And here is Solomon now in First Kings chapter 8, interceding for the people, calling out to the Lord and talking about the faithfulness of God's covenant. And our response to God's faithfulness in the covenant is to be faithful to him with all of our heart, which reminds us of that beautiful Shema prayer. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind and all your strength. We see that constantly in the book of Deuteronomy, actually, where Moses is continually, encouraging the people. Don't forget the ways of the Lord. Don't forget to follow his commandments. Don't forget to follow his statutes if you want to truly prosper. And it's not a tit for tat kind of thing. Remember, it's a relationship. It's an exchange of love and life and intimacy and communion, right? So, we talk about following the rules of the Lord. It's not like we follow God and then he'll reward us for following him. No, we are willingly participating in a relationship of loving communion with God by following the law of the Lord. It's no different than following your parents, right? The rules and the living in the house. This is what it means to be part of this family. This is what it means to live in the house. And those rules are designed out of love and to keep us safe, right? No difference with God at all. And then we see the gospel from Mark, where the Pharisees are calling out Jesus and his disciples because they're eating their meals without washing their hands, right? We're not talking about getting the dirt off your hands. There was a ritual washing of the hands before you would eat, and these same purification rituals would happen with cups and with jugs and with plates and kettles and other objects like that too. There was a purification ritual before you ate. And Jesus the Pharisees saying, Jesus, you're not following the tradition of our elders, right? Again, this is one of the 613 other laws or other mitzvahs, not part of the Ten Commandments, but part of these 613 other laws. So how does Jesus respond? He first he calls them hypocrites, right? And he quotes from the prophet Isaiah. He goes, "This people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines human precepts." See? So Jesus is calling them out on their hypocrisy. Why? Jesus said, you're putting these human traditions and yeah, these laws from God, but they're not as important as the commandments. Those are the laws that tie us to God's heart. But these other minor, commandments, you're putting them at the same level as the other commandments. And look, and Jesus is saying, it's more important to give your heart, give your life to the Lord, and not again be dwelling on these minuscule things that, not saying that they're not important, but they're not nearly as important as the fervor of the prayer and giving your heart and your soul to the Lord and doing it out of this deep love for Him and washing your hands, this ritual cleansing before you eat, that doesn't meet that level. So that's what Jesus is saying. And in fact, he even goes on further. He said, you disregard God's commandments, but you cling to human tradition, right? And so Jesus goes on to talk about that. And the psalm that ties this all together is Psalm 84, right? So Psalm 84 is from the sons of Korah. And remember, Korah rebelled against Moses and Aaron in Numbers chapter 16. And said the only ones that survived the Korite rebellion were the sons of Korah, Numbers chapter 26, verse 11. And this, I love this psalm. So in Psalm 73 to 89 is in book 3 of the Psalms. Psalms 84, 85, 87, and 88 are by the sons of Korah. And the refrain is, how lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord God of hosts. I love that. How lovely is your dwelling place. So the dwelling place, of course, the first thing that they would think about would be what? The temple, the Ark of the Covenant, the dwelling place of the Lord. But here's the thing. The Lord also dwells in each and every one of us. It says, my soul yearns and pines for the courts of the Lord. My soul is longing and yearning to be with God, right? And rightly so.
For more on the Psalms with Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, check out Beacon of Truth weekdays at 4 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio and streaming everywhere you listen to podcasts.